Blog Talk Radio.
Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. I sense your presence. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And in the presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I see aspiring to be free. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. And I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Within and without, above and below, yeah. East, west, north and south, I sense your presence. Without and within, below and above, yeah. East, west, north and south, I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I find in tune with the divine. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. Restore the balance of the universal mind. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. For to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, holy angel of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. I sense your presence.
Thank you for joining me here tonight on Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. My name is Jessie Ann Nichols George, and I'm your hostess this evening. The music you were listening to there at the beginning of the show is I Sense Your Presence. It's by Shemshai, great little group that I connected with in the Sedona, Arizona area for a while, is traveling around the world, living their dream, enjoying themselves, and, sharing their music with everybody. I want to extend a welcome to everybody that's joining us here tonight, whether this is your first time tuning in or whether you've listened to the show before and you're tuning in again. And I also want to welcome all those networks out there that we're streaming live through now. As I mentioned last week, we now have 3 other networks that we're streaming live through, which is Para Encounters Network, TalkStream Live, and Stream Finder. So I welcome all the listeners that are coming in from those avenues as well. Here at Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour, I'm looking at different ways that compassion exists in our lives and how to remove those blocks, the frustrations, the resistances, all those things that kind of interfere and get in our way. Some weeks I'm discussing different aspects of how compassion's in our life, how it affects our life, different areas of compassion. Sometimes there's exercises and practical implementations going on in the show. And then many times I've got guests on the show, like tonight. We're starting a brand new year off, and Sharita Starr on our show, so had fantastic guests last year as well. And, for example, we had some musical artists on last year, Stephen Halpern, Peter Cater, a couple of Grammy nominees, as well as Claire Hedin and Jill Matson, a few people there. And you can always go back and catch those shows in the archives as well. Now, in my own work, what I do is I focus on helping people find and use compassion in their everyday lives. I've created the Genesis Clearing Statement, which some of you have experienced on previous shows, and Kevin Baird, one of our other hosts here on the network, actually did a great interview with me when I first started the network, and that was back in the fall of 2012. We have that archived as well if you want to catch it. And then I've authored 4 books, the most recent being You, Me, Life Dreams, and the companion workbook to that. And then my first 2 books, Activating Compassion and its companion workbook. I've created the Compassion Tour, which is a multi-state nationwide tour, including workshops, retreats, seminars, book signings, and fundraising events. And I'm already working on putting together some things for 2014, and you can follow all of those things at JessieAnnNicholsGeorge.eventbrite.com. And just a reminder, if you enjoy the show tonight, and this is going to be a really awesome show because I've listened to Sharita. I've jumped in on some of her shows before, and they're really fantastic. You're going to want to share them, trust me. And you can just go ahead and use the same link that you used to come into the show for the archives. They can listen at their convenience. Also, we've got on my website, JessieAnnNicholsGeorge1.com. If you go to my page under the Main Street Universe tab, so that's the Jessie Ann Nichols George page under there, you'll find all of the archive shows, and they can access it there as well. So that's an easy way to do it. Now, before we get started tonight, those that have listened to the show before, you know what I like to do is to delve into the 72 names of God, Technology for the Soul, give a little message here for the week. And this message that I pull out of this book by Yehuda Berg is posted on my page on the Main Street Universe tab. So you can always go back and look at it during the week if you want to refresh what the message was and reflect on it some more as well. And let's open up and see what we've got tonight for our message. And we have the word or the of God, or the name of God that we're working with tonight is No Agenda. And that's a common name for it. And it says here, the message is, do you ever feel let down by the people whom you befriended? Are you frequently disappointed by circumstances in which you gave so much of yourself? If your answer to both questions is no, you can just skip right over and not pay a lot of attention from here. But if you answered yes, and here's his insight on this, To the preceding questions, chances are your positive actions were contingent upon you receiving some form of benefit down the road. We frequently befriend others or perform favors with a hidden agenda. The friendship we offer is usually conditional without us even realizing it. We want something in return. It might be social standing, a loan, or a favor that we would like to call in at some point in the future. Our actions of sharing usually have strings attached as well. For instance, a patron's name is inscribed onto a plaque and then hung up in a lobby. A dinner is given in the benefactor's honor. A hospital wing is named after the charitable contributor. In Kabbalah, this is not considered unconditional sharing. True sharing is nameless, so that the giver and the receiver have no idea who each other are. The giver gives, period. Givers derive their pleasure from the unconditional, anonymous act of pure sharing, expecting nothing in return. And that is when they receive everything. We give unconditional love and perform genuine actions of sharing. Joy comes from our giving, not from what we want in return. And the meditation Yehuda provides on this is as follows. Self-interest, ulterior motives, and hidden agendas give way to pure acts of friendship, unconditional love, and giving. In return, true and loving friends, joy, and fulfillment are attracted into your life. It's an amazing thing. Definitely fits in with my work in compassion. There's no doubt about that. And it's a great way to start the year off, right? It's a great way to start off thinking about unconditional giving and having no agendas. I think, man, if you're going to put your focus on something for the year, no agendas is a pretty great place to put it. The way this name is pronounced is Nun Aleph. That's no agenda, and it's pronounced Nun Aleph. So there's our message for the week. Again, you can check that out on my page on the Main Street Universe tab on my website. And the website is JessieAnnNicholsGeorge1.com. Now, a little something here before we get into our guest tonight. And this will just give us a little something to think about, and then we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll have Sharita on. Do spiritual tools really have a place in our life? Is there any validity to them? How much should we pay attention to them? Most people at one time or another have looked at or been intrigued by spiritual tools. They may have had an astrological chart done, sought out a tarot reader, applied feng shui, or said maybe a prayer or a chant or any one of numerous other things out there. I myself, I've studied and learned to work with many tools along the way. Astrology and gemstones were two of the first that I was drawn to as a young child. Many people have written such tools off as hogwash, mildly accurate, metaphysical mumbo-jumbo. There is the thought that if you are truly spiritual, you don't need to use tools. There's no place for them in our lives, and that they are only a distraction from true connection. Some religions have gone so far as to say that they are unholy, blasphemous, and strictly forbidden to use. As we look into these things, we find that they are based on real patterns and sciences of the universe. They are formulas, just like in chemistry. Tools are not needed to connect with God, Spirit, Divine. However, they may still play a valuable role for us. As for being unholy, how can anything that God created and provided for us as a means to understand our purpose and what needs to be done by the plan of God be unholy? Astrology is one example of this. God shared the understanding of knowing how to read the stars with the prophets and other holy messengers. It was a language given to us by the divine to understand how to prepare for life events, to be wise in our actions, not to give up and accept defeat, but to give us the opportunity to change. Much like the friend that tells you that you are headed into a major business meeting with a shirt covered in dirty oil and that you might want to change your shirt before entering the meeting. Do we have to change the shirt to have a successful deal? No. However, it will help things go smoother and be more compassionate to others by helping them to feel more comfortable and open. Yes, it will. I see many of these tools like that of a foreign language. Do we need to learn someone else's language to communicate with them? No. However, conversation is likely to be long and arduous without knowing it. It will be far more challenging to do. Yet if we know the language of the other person, we can easily converse with them and have more enjoyable moments. These tools, in some ways, might even be like having a great interpreter. They translate the nonverbal and non-mental language of the divine into something that our human self can grasp and understand easier. Now, many may have progressed themselves to a point that they choose not to use tools anymore, and that's all wonderful. However, for many that are just starting out, say, on their path, or growing and developing on their path, tools can be really valuable and useful. See, they are really just simply put a learning tool. Sharita Starr is one of those that has a highly refined gift with tools such as astrology, numerology, and lexicograms in particular. She is what one might say a universal translator that helps us to blend in and work with the culture that we call Earth. She helps us to know how to flow naturally with any point in time in our lives, helping us to be in greater harmony with ourselves and others. She helps us understand ourselves better and to realize what we are really communicating with the words and phrases that we use in things. Lexigram. Let's take the title. What is the purpose of spiritual tools? A portal for use has that life is upper wise so use. If lost the sure, post to soulful health. Pros to heart, so useful help. Healer for soulful path. Spiraled show, lift the soul. How our house with all that is, helpful to the soul that's lost. Shows the heart's true house. What tools have you used along the way? What role have such tools played in your life? And what experiences have you had using such tools? This week, our guest focuses on a component of compassion that is related to the aspect in my books of blind, deaf, and defensive. It reminds us to be open to learning from all situations and things around us. Even those things that challenge us can provide wonderful lessons, insights, and guidance. I'm going to take a short break, and when we return, I will have Sharita with us, and she's going to be sharing her work in lexicograms, astrology, numerology, and what we can expect for 2014. We'll be back here in just a couple of minutes.
A walk through Epping Forest. So there I go, walking through the forest of my youth. And as my feet go one, planted in front of the other, walking on the pathway, covered in leaves, different colors, different stages of decay, of brittleness, subtlety, suppleness, fern and bracken interwoven, different vegetation talking to each other, nestling amongst each other, intertwining amongst each other. And as I look up to the forest of the trees above, the tall, tall trunks reaching to the sky, to the sun, to the rain, everything has its place. The sunlight is dappled across the leaves, across the ground, across my face, my hair. And as I walk, I feel the forest wrapping itself around me and at the same time opening itself up for me. And we are one. As I walk, it walks with me. As I move, it moves. One expressing the other, connected. And then comes a breeze. The leaves rustle. They bend. Constantly shimmering in the sunlight. The creatures, the little animals, the little insects, everything so populated, so busy, so silent, so loud. Movement, movement, movement. So graceful, this movement is so graceful. This earth is so beautiful. It's so alive. Constantly dying, regenerating, constant motion, cycles of being. And I'm in that. I'm a part of that, not from it. So beautiful.
And welcome back to Activating Compassion in the Midnight Hour. My name is Jessie Ann Nichols George, and I'm your hostess this evening. And the song you were just listening to is titled A Walk in Epping Forest. It's by Claire Hedin. And again, if you missed her show, she was the very last show of 2012. You can catch that in the archives. And her website is at the bottom of the show description there, www.clairehedin.com. That's CLAREHEDIN.com, in case you want to check out more of her music and her work. Now, I'd like to bring on my guest tonight, Sharita Starr. As a spiritual life coach, Sharita Starr distinctly sees how patterns of energy form within our lives through the tools of astrology, numerology, and lexicograms. Touted across the globe as a psychic of the planets, she is a constant student of observing how cycles affect our lives. Sharita is a celebrated radio and TV personality as a popular returning guest and currently can be heard on Empower Radio with her weekly Empower Scopes. Her regular featured columns provide powerful forecasts to assist in empowering and navigating our lives. Her book, It's All in the Name, captures the fascinating topic of lexicograms, engaging the reader to spell out the truth from the letters contained within any word, name, or title, answering the question, what's really in a name? We discuss her work, look at what 2014 has in store for us, and delve into her world of wisdom tonight. And you can learn more about her work at www.sharitastar.com, and also more of her work with lexicograms at www.bookoflexicograms.com. Sharita, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, Jessie, and it's an honor to be with you and to be your first Friday night, or late in the night. I guess it's Saturday now, right? It's Saturday in my world. A pleasure to be with you. A pleasure to be with you.
It's so awesome to have you here, and I've listened in, and I know I connected with you a while back, and I've been kind of watching your work, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of really cool. And as I said at the beginning of the show, I started off with astrology and things, and so I'm really particular about people who do astrology, because I used to hand cast charts, and so
and God bless you, because that takes a lot of time, and yes, it's fascinating. You can't read as many people as you can with these computer programs that we have now today, which they do save that. But yes, it's wonderful to know how to do that. That's how the ancients did it.
So when I saw your work, I was just like, she knows her stuff. She totally knows her stuff, and I watched it for a while, and I go, yeah, I really like what she's putting out there. Like, I can resonate with this, and if I can resonate with it, I know there's going to be a lot of other people out there that resonate with it.
Well, I'm honored to hear you say that, and I give you one of my favorite lexicograms. I give you a great true attitude of gratitude.
Oh, thank you. It's been so fun connecting with you, during the time coming up to this show as well. But I would love for you to share a little bit of your background, like who's Sharita and how did she get to doing this work of astrology and lexicograms and numerology?
Well, interesting story. Which, I guess when I was that young, I didn't take any particular note of it that, this is what I'll be when I grow up. But I started reading the horoscope when I was 7 by default because it was next to the funnies in the newspaper. I just always had a little, I kept reading it, and I knew my sun sign from a very early age, and I never, like I said, I never understood I was doing anything in particular, but I always remembered somebody's birthday. So I'd always read their horoscope, and I'd go, oh, okay. And boys I had crushes on and funny things like that, were my friends. And I'd be like, oh yeah, well that's kind of what's going on in my friend's life. And it just sort of stuck with me, but I never thought much about it in any context other than, okay, I was interested in it. And it wasn't until my later 20s that I was working with a new age music label called Astro Music, where I was working a trade show. It was the International New Age, the INATS every year, the trade show that they always have in Denver, Colorado. And I was wandering around on a break, and I came across the Linda Goodman star cards. Now, I had a copy of Star Signs. I had not quite finished it, and about maybe 2 or 3 years prior to that moment in my life, picked up the cards, and I was like, oh, wow, these relate to that book I never finished. And I went home, dug it out of my library, and I finished it cover to cover that time, and that was it. That was it. It was rereading Star Signs, where Linda talks about the connection of astrology to numerology and the fact that they're guided by the same planets. And then I got to I think it's chapter 8 or 9 when she talks about these lexicograms and this mysterious, odd thing about the English language, that our words, our names contain stories. They contain clues to help our lives. It blew my mind. And that was it. It was like something just took me by the hand in that moment, and it was during my Saturn return, which we all collectively go through this as a cycle between around and about the age of 28 to 30 years of age. We all experience our first Saturn return, and that's via a astrological transit. Saturn is our planet of maturity, responsibility, doing things the right way, and it's the first time when it comes back around to where it was in the zodiac at the exact moment we were born. It'll come back to the same sign. Saturn moves rather slow up there, so he's affecting one given area of the life for about 2.5 years, depending. And my Saturn happens to be in my house of work, career and public life. So I was a little bit of a late bloomer because I was a theater major in college. I worked in the restaurant industry, of course, and, managed this restaurant, did this. I worked in every facet. I didn't cook, but I did just about everything else. And I got very aggravated with it. It wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. But I really didn't want to pursue the acting thing either. Once I saw what the business was like, it just didn't thrill me. So there I was, just at that crux of my Saturn return, and boom, this happened. And via numbers, I was also in the midst of changing my first to second period cycle of my life simultaneously. So once I started to understand this stuff and even applying it to my own life, I was like, wow, this is really wicked, how this stuff works. And, Linda says in Star Signs, she goes, don't take my word for this stuff. She goes, go out and apply it. And that was when dawned on me, I did have this library of birthdays in my memory banks that I was like, oh God, this totally describes this person, that describes that person. Wow, that's she's totally right. And then I started examining these names, and I was just, and the lexicograms hooked me. I'm hooked on it all, but the lexicograms really threw me for a loop because, I mean, I started examining famous people's names. Then I just started examining, people I knew, my family, my friends, my boyfriend at the time, and I was blown out of the water how a name tells a story. There is this thing, what's really in a name? I mean, it's just like, whoa, why does this work this way? It's a bit of a phenomenon, to be honest with you. I mean, I have no explanation for it. And Linda really doesn't either. But it works, and it's nothing short of fascinating. So that was why I chose to write the book, because let's face it, there's a ton of astrology, there's a ton of numerology books out there, but nobody had devoted a book to these lexicograms. And that's why I chose to write the lexigram book first, and then we'll take it all from there.
So now let's explain that a little bit more about lexicograms, because this is kind of a newer concept, maybe for some of the listeners, some of them not. You say it's a word that tells a story. Is there a particular way that works? Like, do you just select certain letters, or?
Well, basically the gist is you could take a simple word. You can, and I recommend when you get going, just start with words. Don't worry about your name so much right off the bat. But hey, if it's something that really resonates with you, and if you're a word jumble person, you like to play crossword puzzles, you like Scrabble and things like that, you're gonna love lexicograms because it's very similar. Because it's just about scrambling some letters up. But the basic concept is you take a simple word, name, title, whatever it may be. You just simply anagram, which means you're just going to take other words from the original and just spell other words. You don't need to use all the letters in the same word. You can make short words, bigger words, in between words, and you just start making a list of the anagrams. And the art of the lexigramming is taking the anagrams and making poetic phrases out of it. And then in that process becomes the telling of the story. It starts telling these stories or giving you a little bit of clue. So, for example, let's use compassion, the name of your show. And if you're a Facebook person, I just posted these to my Sharita Star, Author Sharita, or It's All in the Name pages on Facebook, so you can check out any of those. But the word compassion spells these phrases. I am in no pains. I am in no sins, no panics. I am a compass as I pass mass pains. I am in a main cosmos map as I spin in a sonic passion. That all comes out. Of course, passion's pretty easy to get from compassion, but it's still in there. It's like the word impossible. And that was another one. I just was on Facebook a couple hours ago and popped that one on there because I'm always, Facebook is terrible for me because it's like I call it my occupational hazard. People are posting stuff in capital letters all the time, and that is one of the rules about the lexicograms is that they have to be written in capital letters. So if you do see my stuff on Facebook or anywhere, Twitter, wherever I'm at on the social media, when I'm writing in capital letters, I'm not shouting at you. And if you pick up a copy, if it's all in the name, I'm not shouting at you there either. It's the rules. These are the things that Linda set up in star signs. So I followed these rules when I wrote the book. But impossible spells, very simply, I'm possible. So I be bliss, I be blessed. So I smile miles comes out of impossible, interestingly enough. How do you evolve? It's in the word. Yeah. You have to love. There's no other action you're going to do in life to evolve but love. If you want good health, let the hate heal. Heal the hate.
It's so fascinating. I have a question. I'm sure it's probably running through some other people's minds as well.
Yes.
Is there a reason for all caps?
Yes. Linda explains it she explains it very extensively in star signs, but I'm going to tell you what I lexicogrammed from the very phrase capital letters. All letters tell a real secret. All letters seep real lies. All letters set a real pace. As letters are reset, letters tell a real tale. All letters let a peace tale spiral. So what's interesting, especially when you get into your name and you get into like business entities, names of other, books, whatever, it's something, everything in life has a title. Everything is written in capital letters. Or I should say, not everything's written in capital letters, but your name as a legal identity is always written in capital letters. Look at your license, your credit card, your checks, your Social Security card, your passport. It's all written in capital letters across the board. There's nothing written in lowercase letters as a legal form of identity in your life. Why she chose the capital letters, it just really gets the point across a little easier. Because it's not all, small. You don't see it as, you don't see it as clearly. But she explains a little bit more in star signs about that too. Because I always recommend go to the source, read star signs if you really want to know the source of my work. Of course, I even have a chapter in It's All in the Name that it talks about the rules that Linda set up that I kind of discovered, sometimes these can be broken a little bit in certain ways. So once you kind of get into some things, it's really interesting. But that's really the rule about the capital letters. So no, we're not shouting.
Okay.
Which of course is the modern day thing about if you see capital letters, you must be shouting,
It's good to warn people of that because they wouldn't know necessarily. And I know there's some different thoughts on capital letter things out there right now. So, I wanted people to understand your perspective from that and where it was coming from. Now, we have it seems like a long time on the show, but it never is.
I 2-hour shows all the time, and it doesn't seem like 2 hours whatsoever. It's like they go by so fast. So no, not at all. Love it. You always kind of need hours to dive into good stuff like this.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so totally fun. So I do want to touch on a couple of things here because I do have some people, lined up and asking if they can work with you tonight and things like that too. So I want to try to honor some of that time as well in here. And one of the things I want to touch on first, though, before we go into that, is astrology. You do your own forecast, and a couple of things. What role do you see astrology playing in our life, and what do you look at when you're creating, for example, your forecast to help people say, here's what's going to happen in the next moon cycle or at this?
Well, I'm going to share a quote with you that I just adore and I always use every month as I do various forecasts. I do one for the month ahead, the zodiac month ahead, which is just talking about what planets will be moving in that month's time as the sun is in one particular sign. So, and that's what, across the board, people grasp astrology. They tend to be a little intimidated by the topic, but they actually know a little bit more than they're giving themselves the credit for, I often find. The average person knows their sun sign. The average person reads their horoscope, whether they think it's hogwash or they don't. The average person is curious about that little blurb in the paper. They'll read it, and they've done it. And basically the understanding of, am I a Leo, am I a Pisces, or, whatever sign of the 12 that there are. So that's what I do on a monthly basis, is write for the passage of the sun through that given sign. And the sun takes 30 days, 30 degrees to go through each sign, which will round and about add up to the 365-day year. And it was actually someone very highly regarded in the business world who said this, and this was former Chrysler CEO Lee Iacocca, said, quote, "As far back as I can remember, I've always been a strong believer in the importance of cycles. You'd better try to understand them because all of your timing and often your luck is tied up in them. And this is the very thing that not only astrology teaches us, but so does our numerology. Everything is secular in our lives. Every single thing we do. From the moment that we're born, we get that birth chart and we get this numerological map because of the way that the numbers are all hanging out in our birthday. And then there's another form of looking at numerology through the understanding of your name because every letter in the alphabet has a numerical vibration attached to it. So the way you legally choose to spell your name is extremely important. And that's another thing explained in It's All in the Name. And Linda, of course, also gets into this in star signs. So if you don't understand these cycles, you will be like a salmon swimming upstream because there is a particular pattern that you and you alone are meant to follow. It's not your mother's pattern. It's not your best friend's pattern. It's yours. And everybody's got their own deal. And when you tap into that, it makes your life go so much smoother. You understand things on such a greater level. And you don't have to it's not that you're not going to keep making mistakes and you're not going to keep learning and you're not going to keep growing, but you're going to optimize how you're doing it rather than, oh my God, I started that under a Mercury retrograde, which of course we'll be talking about Mercury retrograde. There's certainly there's times in your life when you do not want to be starting something. And that is really why I got into writing the lunaroscope, which is what you first mentioned, and that's the lunar horoscope that I do bi-monthly. And it's the simplicity of knowing when it's a waxing phase, which is what starts at a new moon every month, begins a new waxing phase, and that moon will start to gather back up in the light. Well, that's when we want to initiate. That's when we want to put something out there. We want to plant some seeds. We want to get some things going. Then it comes to fruition and everything gets full at that full moon. That's when a waning phase begins. Then we lose the light again. And that's when we are more favored to reflect, review, redo, and kind of reassess what we just sort of started in the prior 2 weeks. And if we start to, and if you look at the moon alone, it controls the cycles of the ocean. It controls women's cycles. It has a pretty strong effect on things. And when you look at your astrology chart, it also governs your emotions, which is why we are emotional feeling beings. That's what we are. And I think any person knows when their feelings are not in check, they're not having a good day. They're not thinking very well. They're not believing things very well either. So it will trickle out into all these areas. So having a real understanding of what's going on with yourself emotionally. And our moon, of course, because we have a new moon every month, it's in one sign, then the next, then the next, and then the next. It goes all through 12 signs all year long. So that is why the moon actually gets all the way around that zodiac in 1 month's time. It changes a sign every couple days. So that's why people are so affected by something like that moon. And we can see the moon. It's not like it doesn't exist. It's there. You see it all the time. People know you're a little emotional under a full moon, or people get a little more, I bet you could walk into any hospital, you could walk into any police station, and they would tell you, hey, on a full moon is when things kind of happen a little more intensely than it does any other days of the month. Not that things don't happen, but there's a intensity of it over that time. And that's when we really don't want to be doing a lot of things for the future. We want to kind of take that back seat. There's other things that the moon indicates that with timing in our life is when it's moon void, of course. This is just another little time frame. This happens every couple of days. It's a time when we are not meant to be signing things, having important meetings, talking about the future. this could happen when we're sleeping. It varies all the time. There's no way to consistently measure it. You just have to follow. You've got to follow what astrology teaches you to just know. There's all sorts of moon void, of course, calendars all the time. But I always put this in my Empowerscope every week, so people at least know a little ahead of time. Hey, shouldn't be having an important meeting Wednesday afternoon because the moon's void, of course, till 2 p.m. After 2 o'clock, we can have that meeting. Depending on when it falls. Sometimes it happens when we're sleeping. Sometimes it's on the weekends, and it may not matter so much. But understanding that the lunar, just for starters, is a brilliant thing to just understand. And then we move out. And then we move out a little bit more, and the next big one to know about is Mercury retrograde. And I even if you're not the biggest astrology follower, you probably have heard that phrase at some point. A lot of people do hear about it, and they go, "What? What do you mean?" But believe me, you all know when this happens. It happens about 3 times a year, for about 3.5 weeks at a time. And it's when everything in life seems so upside down and appointments change, things break down, people are late, nothing is going straight. That's Mercury retrograde passages. Mercury is our planet that guides communications, thinking, mentality, speaking, writing, any form of communication, any mechanism in life that moves, which is including cars, trains, planes, any of these things. So, and the retrograde is this. It means the planet's not moving forward. Technically, an astronomer would explain it to you differently, but how tropical astrology understands this is that it's actually going backwards in the degrees that we measure it, in whatever given sign that it is at the time. So instead of moving forward in those 30 degrees of space, it's going backwards. It'll come to a point of stationing, and then it goes backwards for that 3.5 week period. So when a planet that guides communication, thinking, mentality, mechanisms that move, how we speak, so on and so forth, when that is going backwards, we are in the highest error, human error that we can make. Mistakes are very often made under Mercury retrograde. Like, you do not want to do anything of importance under Mercury retrograde for the future. It is the universe's request, and this naturally happens about 3 times a year. So it's an offering for a chill out and a relaxed time. I always say I have the rules of Mercury retrograde is the REs. Any word that begins with RE, you're typically safe to do. Like relax, reflect, redo, regroup, reorganize, rest, retreat, review. Just take that, kind of reflective time. Because let's face it, we cannot go forward all the time. It's like sleeping. And that's another interesting, understanding the measurement. When you add up the hours that Mercury retrogrades in one calendar year's time, it is the equivalent of the hours that we actually tend to sleep in a year's time. The same thing.
Wow.
So it's our offering. It's it's like this. Socrates said it: as above, so below. What happens up there does affect our lives down here. It has, years, eons and eons and eons ago. You look at Japanese culture, you look at, Mesopotamia, Egypt. There were so many people who valued and guarded astrology. They kind of kept it from the common person. But somehow along the way in modern day, it became, kind of like, oh, that's just like entertaining, and that's not true. And, of course, the average horoscope in the newspaper might hit it, might not. So people have kind of lost the sense that it's valuable in any way, shape, or form. But, here's another interesting person who sought out to disprove astrology and said this, quote, "Astrology is a science. It contains an illuminating body of knowledge, and it is like a life-giving elixir for mankind." Do you know who said that? Albert Einstein. One of our absolute greatest scientists on this earth. If he validated astrology, well, then how come it's that's where I go, okay, naysayers. That's okay. Go ahead.
It really is. It's like a recipe, only it's in the sky. I mean, it's very scientific. When certain ingredients come together in a recipe, you're going to get a certain result. Yeah. And you can use the same ingredients, but if you use different proportions of those ingredients, you're going to get different results. Mm-hmm. And the Mercury retrograde, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I actually had some people really questioning me on stuff that I was scheduling. They're like, I can't believe you're scheduling workshops during a Mercury retrograde. Oh my God, do you know that's nobody ever wants to show? And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. It's actually a very perfect time.
It is a perfect time
for a workshop, like spiritual type.
I was totally going to say that, because it's a reflective action. Totally.
Exactly. So yes. I want people to think about that when they're sitting there going, oh my gosh, I can't do anything in this Mercury retrograde. Go get a spiritual retreat. Go get out in nature. Ground yourself. It's the perfect thing. Because
there's wonderful. There's wonderful things you can do under Mercury retrograde. Yes, having a workshop, having a class like that. But, here's what you don't want to do under Mercury retrograde. Don't go and get married. Don't go buying a new car, because you're probably going to get a lemon. Your marriage is based on a date that is bad communication. So do you want that for the rest of your marriage? I mean, obviously not. You don't want to start a business under Mercury retrograde. Those are the types of things that you don't want to do.
The logical mind processes.
Exactly. Yes. I would say I wouldn't buy a house under Mercury retrograde unless I was, the person selling it, and I wanted to just ditch the darn thing and get rid of it. But that's going to become the buyer's problem. Buying something like that under a Mercury retrograde, because it's going to be riddled with some sort of error that you're going to have to fix later. So, but reflective work, anything like that is perfect. Mercury retrograde is great for going back into old projects, what you've already created, and revisiting things. And it's great to call up old friends you haven't seen in a really long time, reconnect. All sorts of stuff like that. It's meant to be a time when you're kind of recharging yourself a little bit, and like you say, go get grounded. I always say go to a great art at Mercury retrograde. Go to a museum. There's loads of fun things you can do. It's just not favored for really planting, solid, powerful seeds that you would like to see a fruitful return from later on. That's what it's not good for. Because, hey, if you were the planet of communication and movement and all thinking, and then you were going backwards, you would cause a little flux down here too. And you see it in the news. I love Mercury retrograde because I love watching this stuff happen all the time. Like, you see these newscasters, they're constantly flubbing up and making mistakes on the air. There's misprints in the newspaper left and right. People get things so confused. It's like, and you have to laugh at it because it's kind of funny. Like, oh yeah, that's Mercury retrograde. And you just laugh at it. When somebody changes an appointment, it's like, okay, I don't have to get excited. But it's the person who resists that change is happening under Mercury retrograde that gets so tripped up by it, and then it's like the domino effect shows up. Oh, I want this to work out just like this, because you always need plan B, C, and D, maybe even E lined up under Mercury retrograde, so that you've got the alternative. You've always got to have an alternative going on under Mercury retrograde. That's another big rule about it. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself nuts, and you're going to get aggravated, because when plan A doesn't work, you need plan B, C, and D. Bring an extra book to the airport if you're traveling, because your plane might be delayed. Those types of things are what happens.
Exactly it. Now, I'm hoping that you can give us a little bit of insight here, Sharita. It's a brand new year, and I know a lot of people are going, oh man, 2013 gave me a whipping and a half. And
I have heard that
I'm going into
before,
this
too.
year beat and worn down, and I think a lot of people are looking for a little optimism coming into 2014. Like, right, we had that new moon on New Year's Day, so
Yeah,
that
was very powerful.
Right? Give us a little insight. What are we looking at this year for 2014?
Well, what was really sweet, and you brought that right up there. It's an oddity that it lines up so well that you would have a new moon on the first day of the year. I think the last time that happened was about 19 years ago, give or take. It doesn't happen all that often, so it was really powerful. I thought, to have a new moon. However, we're not under the Mercury retrograde right now, but we're under a Venus retrograde.
I know.
Which started on the solstice in 2013, the winter solstice, which is when we enter winter. We also enter the sign of Capricorn, which is one of our leadership signs, and all of our leadership signs begin a season. Aries will begin spring, Cancer will begin summer, and Libra will begin fall, and thus Capricorn begins our winter. Our fixed signs will fix us into the season, and our communicating, our mutable signs will get us ready for the next season to kick off a month later. So that's the three, what we call the tasks of astrology. We have our leaders, we have our organizers, our fixed signs, and then we have our mutable communicators. So every sign is one of three. You're one of those three things, and that's what you typically excel at for your career, or what you're really good at doing for through your work or whatever it is that you do. So anyway, not to get into the explanation of astrology. So under the leadership sign of Capricorn, we have Venus, who is currently retrograde. Now, Venus is the second planet out from Mercury, and of course the moon is the closest thing to us. And technically, by all astronomers, the moon isn't a planet anyway, but I won't get into that. It's still governed as a vessel that we measure in astrology all the same. So technically, as a planet, Venus is the next one out from Mercury. Now, she governs over money, anything financial, beauty, nature, and our values, what we do in our relationships, how we would approach our romance, and how we would be affectionate in life. So when Venus goes backwards and does this little retrograde thing, all of those areas of life are things that you don't want to do forward motion in. So you don't want to buy luxurious purchases under a Venus retrograde because you're not going to get the right value. You don't want to go try out a new hairdresser. You don't want to get plastic surgery. Don't change your hair color. Don't move your money around to make more money, because that's not going to work. You're going to end up probably getting a bad deal. Houses, buying a house is also typically not favored under a Venus retrograde either, unless you just, again, want to kind of ditch it and get rid of it. The seller may find it's a total bargain. And bargains, like sales, are very favored under a Venus retrograde. So like buying something for 50% off or whatever, those are favored things to do, because you're bound to get the lesser value and you scoop it up. Those are favored. It's also good to be charitable with your money under Venus retrograde. So if there's like a charity or something that you'd like to donate to, that's cool to do. And we also start to explore just the value of just about anything in our life, and especially our relationships. Now, wherever Capricorn, because that's where Venus is retrograding right now, wherever Capricorn sits in your natal birth chart, and there's two ways that you look at this when you're looking at your forecast. Just knowing what your sun sign is one way. That's just I would say that's a lot more general. And when you're reading a horoscope in the newspaper every day, if you tend to do that, that's the perspective that they're reading it from. They're just saying, hey, you're a Leo, you're a Pisces, you're whatever sign you are, and they're looking at what planets are doing in the here and the now in whatever sign they're in. Now, when you look at it from just your sun sign perspective, the astrologer sees which area of life, according to you being that sun sign, that this particular planetary energy is doing its thing in. Now, when you have a birth chart, and that's why we want to know what time you're born, because that gives you a very much more personal and intimate and in-depth perspective of who you are, because you're going to get a rising sign out of that, and that's basically saying what signs was on the horizon at the moment you were born. Sometimes, if you're born near sunrise, you are going to typically have the same rising sign as your sun, because the sun was coming up off the horizon at that time. Let's say you were born at noon. Well, you're going to have the sign about 4 signs behind you as your rising sign. If you're born near sunset, you'll have the opposite sign as your rising sign. And if you're born in the middle of the night, that'll be the sign that's like 9 signs away from you. That's how you start to see. So that gives you your personal chart. And that one's much more intimate and much more on point with the real nitty-gritty of your life. But looking at things from just the sun sign perspective is also very helpful, because there is 2 ways that these current transits do affect us. You can't really exclude either one. So that's how you kind of can see things in astrology. Now, when you're looking at something like the Venus retrograde that we're talking about, so you want to look at, okay, where's Capricorn affecting my life? If people do go to my website, I have, if you go down to the lower down on the right-hand side, you'll see the little thing that says forecast, and you'll see it'll say Venus retrograde, time to review and redo, and click on that. It'll take you right to the piece about it. There is a little tidbit in there for every sign. Just the general area of life that you're looking at. What are you exploring about the value of things? What's going on with the relationships in that area of your life? Is there money things involved in that? All the things. And there's a whole thing about what the Venus retrograde, really, really in-depth stuff. Now, she's going to be retrograding until the 30th of January. She's a little bit of a longer cycle than how Mercury does it. Mercury is the fastest retrograde. He's the quickest, which most people are very thankful for, because they can't stand it when he's retrograde.
I'm actually looking forward to this direct motion with Venus going direct at that time, because it's right on top of the Chinese New Year.
Yes, and that's interesting, because now, and then we have, this year is wild, I'll tell you this. And,
It is.
What is interesting, too, is, okay, we've entered 2014. Now, switching over to numbers, not to confuse anybody, but we're going to switch to numbers real quick. When you add the year up, you get 2 plus 0, which is obviously not going to increase anything. 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 4 is going to result in 7. So right now we're also in what we call a 7 universal year. Now, connecting back to planets, the planets guide the signs, the planets guide the numbers, both. So when you're looking at the number 7, you're also looking at Neptune, which is like, if you understand the energy of Pisces, that's also guided by Neptune. So this is a very reflective year. It's a year that favors reflection, inner work, kind of going into that retreat, sharpening the inner saw on many levels. And what is fascinating about the beginning of this year, the first half of this year from the astrological side of things, is that we are in a inner planet retrograde train from the very beginning. We've got Venus. We started the year under Venus. She goes direct. We've got a 5-day break, and then Mercury does his first Mercury retrograde of 2014 from the 6th of February through the 28th. Then he goes direct on the 28th, and then Mars goes retrograde, which is the next planet out from Venus. And when Mars goes retrograde, that's a whole other ball game compared to the other two. And we'll get into that a little bit. And Mars is not a short retrograde. He's going to do this for from the 1st of March until the 19th of May. So you got a Mars retrograde there. Now, it's not as intense as Mercury, but it's still something you've got to be very cautious about. And Mars is in Libra right now. So you're going to want to pay attention to the Libra area of your life. over that time frame. And what Mars is a planet that guides, drives, motivation, your kind of like your spark, your get up and go, and like what makes you do anything. That's Mars in your birth chart. Your natal Mars is going to tell you what makes you take action in your life. Now, when Mars is retrograding in a particular sign, it's going to ask you to reevaluate why you do anything in that area of your life. It's going to take you on a little review trail under that time frame. So we are being asked to, especially in the sign of Libra, how to reevaluate our understanding from that area of life. What's being done fairly? What isn't being done the just way in that area of life? So you're going to get that feeling about wherever Libra sits. And if you happen to be a Libra, well, your whole approaches to life are being asked to totally be like, whoa, let's change up the story here, because you're going to start seeing a lot of things change. Mars is also a planet that will govern endings. It will govern finalization. So this is also a time when you're going to see things come to a conclusion in this area of the life. And doors that seemingly close are going to open up something different. So that's also where you see that, kind of like a shift happen, so to speak. No sooner does Mars go direct, and another couple of weeks later, we get another Mercury retrograde, which will then begin on the 7th of June and will take us through July 1st. So the first half of this year is all interplanet retrograde action, which is so in tune with what the universal year of the 2014 equals 7 kind of says. You know what? It's time to reflect. It's time to take kind of, a look-see at what's going on. I imagine the metaphysical world will go through such almost like a revolution this year, because in my opinion, in how the world is going, people aren't very happy. They're not happy with the results they're seeing, and they're looking for different answers. And a lot of those answers are going to be seen by really looking at the self, and they're going to realize, I don't need to follow this anymore. I don't need to follow this formula that doesn't work for me. There's so much cookie cutter stuff out there that doesn't really work for everybody. You have to look at the self, and knowing your cycles via astrology and numerology are such powerful self-help tools to be able to do that. Because there's always an explanation. We
have a couple of other little influences besides this whole train in there, because if I remember right, we have Jupiter retrograde right now until like March 7th, and then we have the 5th out of 7 of the Saturn-Pluto squares hitting somewhere April, May.
Yeah, so that was the other thing. I didn't know how far I should go into explain this, because some of it gets a little bit confusing. But if you do pop into that Venus retrograde piece, you'll see another link that will go to the Pluto. I'm calling it the Pluto-Uranus square dance. This has been going on for quite a few years and will continue through 2015. It's where Pluto and Uranus are squaring off to each other. Uranus is in Aries and Pluto is in Capricorn. Now, getting involved in all this, what we call the cardinal axis, meaning all the cardinal signs, there's going to be, and this is going to be just before the 22nd of April, you'll get a couple oppositions and squares, but on the 22nd of April is when everybody squares off completely. And this is the Jupiter in Cancer, the Uranus in Aries, the Pluto in Capricorn, and the Mars in Libra. So all these planets are sitting in a leadership sign, and they're all going to make a direct square to one another at 13 degrees of each of those cardinal signs. This is pretty big in astrology when you get something like this.
They call this round cross or something?
Yeah, there's all these different terms. I try so hard not to get involved in the terminology because it just confuses people.
Right.
If I'm talking to a group of astrologers, that's one thing, but I find the less I try to use that terminology, the more people are interested in astrology.
They just want to know what's happening.
And they really want to know, well, what does that really mean? Because, that's a really, interesting thing for me with, teaching astrology to people is that the terminology means nothing to a person who doesn't understand astrology unless they want to learn astrology. But when you're teaching somebody about, well, how is this really just affecting your life, and they don't want to learn about astrology, you can't use the terminology because it's just overwhelming, and then you've lost them. And then that's why they find no value in it because they're like, I can't follow that. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, But in any case, basically what's happening globally, especially in our own country, is when you're looking at leadership signs, you're looking at 4 energies that want to lead in their own way. And when you get a square, and this is all about like this understanding of everything is just about math, really. Astrology is just math. It's just measuring angles and how things are chatting to each other, and that's why you get your personality quirks, and why do you have a block over here, or why does this flow really good for you? Well, that's just how the planets are talking to each other from that map that we have from the day you're born. That's how we understand what works and doesn't work for you in your life, and why one formula will work for somebody and it won't work for the person sitting next to them because they're not made up for the same. Human beings all want the same goals in life. We all want love. We want good health. We want a nice relationship, have security, have money. But we all attain these things at very different and varying levels. And the way one path will work for one person is not going to work for the next. And that's where this astrology and the numerology becomes so interesting, because it really is your personal thing of how it works. So depending on your personal map and what your sun sign is, this cardinal axis that we're talking about is where all these planets are going to be hanging out at that 13th degree together, is saying, however these leadership signs fall in your particular life, there is an old structure that is, and when you look at squares, okay, if you have 4 90-degree angles, you have a foundation, correct? Naturally. I mean, it's going to create the something, you've got 4 walls. Well, there's 4 90-degree angles there. And the only way something can be built on anything is if it has a structure that's a foundation underneath it. And if you look at a friend of mine on Facebook had this awesome analogy. He said, look at a pyramid. It's the bottom of a pyramid is 4 squares, right? But look what sits on top of that. It's this gorgeous structure. And it's the same thing with what's happening with this cardinal axis. It's like, okay, when something like this happens in astrology, it's asking for something new to shift, and we're going to lock a new thing into place. But because, this isn't highly regarded in everyday life, most people are going to resist what's happening, or they're going to find a little hardship with it. Because let's face it, self-knowledge is not really big in the world. I mean, there's a movement right now, but the average person is not being taught this stuff. I mean, it's not taught in public schools. It's not taught anywhere. It's not taught in an average college. You kind of have to go and find this information out on your own. So there's a lot of people out there that they won't have any idea what's going on. They're just going to be like, why is life so challenging right now? Right. And they're not going to know how to work with it. And it's taking that understanding and uplifting the old, what no longer works, and putting something new into place so that it's going to stand up and you can build something new on top of it. Because squares, naturally, what does a 90-degree angle do? Obviously, there's a tension there. There's a huge tension in a corner, which is why when people have squares and different things in their charts, they tend to, that blocks me in life. I have a little block there. But really, when you look at that square, that it's actually giving you strength, you just have to work a little harder at that. If you had, just so much flow and whatever, you'd probably have so much fun you'd never get anything done. Squares, I like squares. They're you just got to know what to do with them.
Squares are like the grain of sand in the oyster that's going to form the pearl.
Exactly. Because I'm telling you, there's not much that stands in life without a foundation beneath it. And foundation is about squares. It's strength, but it's worth the work it takes to understand. There's a little bit of effort involved in that, but some people don't want to do that either. That's. But we're living, Jesse. We're living in interesting times, as they say. It's a year where I think people are really going to. And I don't like that word "wake up," but there is a greater awareness coming into the consciousness of everything. Because we all know that this country is facing some pretty serious issues, things that need to be fixed. And, the United States has a birth chart like everybody else. There was a time that this country was initiated. And what's really interesting is that when you look at how this cardinal axis is going to kind of click into place for the United States, it's transforming our approaches in this country. So like the way we take on anything is meant to change. There's unexpected things happening in our environment, our home and family lives, and it's really asking us to find new ways to improve the way we nurture ourselves. And let's face it, the health of this country is not the best. It could be a lot different. And obviously we're looking at healthcare in general, and, there's a lot of things going on with that. Our one-on-one relationships in this country are, marriages are falling apart left and right. And what's also very interesting, the United States was, born under a 13-degree Cancer sun. What's also very fascinating about this, from the United States' perspective, is that this cardinal axis is going to click on the Jupiter is going to be right on top of our sun, and all these other planets are going to be squaring our sun as our nation. So this is why it's very intense what will be happening in this country at that point. And when you go into numbers, the United States is in a 8 personal year right now, which is about us kind of harvesting and going through the recognition and reward of what this country did in the previous 7 years of its life as a nation. And when you get into another layer of understanding the cycles numerology can tell us, April is a month of major learning for us. So there's going to be some pretty big things that are going to come out of the water that will teach us a lot of things. Moving into that, the previous month will be a little emotional as well. So we'll see how that leads up in March. And the other thing that this changes is our career and public life in this country, what people are doing for work. The other interesting aspect is that the Mars at that time is going to be in a pretty close conjunction to the United States' Saturn, which is at 14 degrees Libra. That's going to be another interesting kind of a tug and kind of a pull that's going to change some things. And, a lot of people, are losing jobs. The unemployment is not what it was. The employment is, the whole job sector is changing in this country too. People are starting to work for themselves more and more and more, and this country was set up that way to begin with. But where we got lost on that train, I don't know, but it did happen. But this country was founded on being an entrepreneur and doing what it is that you love to do. So what's going to be interesting is that when you've got the current transit of Mars on top of the United States' natal Saturn, there's going to be a motivation like never before to get back to this. Be responsible to what it was that we were supposed to be doing in the first place. The changes that are happening, they may be painful for a lot of people, but they're going to open a better door, because the doors that are closing, they need to be closed for good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can imagine there's going to be a lot of places where will is being forced, or power control things are going to be tossed around, because it's like you say, we're headed back towards that entrepreneurial aspect of things.
Yeah,
in here.
and the people who have been in charge aren't going to like that, because
they're not.
Oh my God, what's going to happen to the distribution of the money? I mean, that's that's like a huge thing. I mean, even this Venus retrograde right now that is in the United States is earning power. So, I would definitely probably say by the end of January, not that the dollar is worth much these days in the first place, but you're probably going to see some interesting things happening with the value of money, the value of stocks, so on and so forth, that are all American. Now, I don't know about foreign countries. It still affects foreign countries on some level, but because this in particular is in the United States' birth chart this way, you're going to see that a little bit, under this Venus retrograde passage. So, again, interesting times that we're living in.
Very much so. And you're sharing a wealth of information. I'm so glad you've shared this, because I want people to realize that, we might be off to this kind of bumpy, rough start, and we got this whole train of retrogrades going on, but there are ways to work with it. There are ways that we can come out not too bruised from it. And, once we kind of get through this, the key is to learn how to shift and change with these influences as opposed to resist them. That doesn't mean comply and,
exactly.
It means learning how to find your personal flow with this. And it can definitely be done. And then I think what I'm hearing from you, if we can kind of get into July, then we're going to be able to really go, wow, now I can start reaping the rewards a little bit from what I've been through.
And, what's interesting is once we go into July and, that Mercury, the second Mercury retrograde will have concluded on the 1st. And then, the United States itself does celebrate another birthday. So we go into what we call a 9 personal year in 2014, and that will continue through our next country's birthday in 15. So these next 2 years in this country are extremely transitory. As far as you're going to see a lot of things end this year. I have a lot of, astrologers that I'm friends with and my colleagues and stuff, and probably we're all in agreement that you are going to see some civil unrest in this country in the year ahead. I highly, highly could see that would happen because of the 9 energy. 9's a great number, but it can do a couple of different things depending on the choices of the free will. 9 is, again, like Mars, is an energy that governs endings, conclusions, finalizations. It's very penetrating. It's a warrior energy as well. And now, if you really understand what a warrior doesn't fight to, want to kill somebody. The warrior stands up in courage to get what it needs to get done. That's going to be critical for anybody in understanding what's going on once we really get into July within this country. But naturally, the other side of Mars is that, and Mars governing the 9, is that you're going to see fighting. You're going to see aggressive action. And you're going to see people kind of in this attitude of, I'm not taking this anymore. Nobody's going to want to put up with it. because the 9 will tell it to you like it is. It always does. And if you're a personality that's born on the 9th, the 18th, or the 27th, you have that in your persona a little bit, that you'll always stand up for what's right, but boy, you will not take any you-know-what in life. You're not going to be like a backseat kind of person. You're always going to be out there kind of foraging a little bit. But the key to 9 and the key to understanding Mars's energy is to rise up in courage, which is a very different energy than being aggressive and conflicting and penetrating and just wanting to be the arguer and rah, 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 rah. Because when you do not fight and you stand up for the solution, you get the better result. Because fighting only brings more fighting when we understand this, and you can apply any of these. The way that your free will always has potential to choose is understanding the law of attraction. So when you understand the give and the take of your personal energy, you can choose one way, but you can choose the other way just as easily. It's up to you. We all know, what was it, Mother Teresa, who said, don't ever ask me to go to an anti-war rally. If you're pro-peace, I'll go. So when we see things we don't like in life, we have to be pro the solution, not fight against what's going on, because the fight doesn't get us anywhere. And that's going to be really, like I said, again, the most critical thing for people to understand as these years unfold, 2014 into 15, especially once we get into the summertime. This summer and into throughout 2015, and then crossing back into 16, we've got new beginnings that will be happening in this country once the summer of 15 is here. But there's going to be a lot of things peeling away before we get to that point. So it's going to be, like I said, we are living in interesting times, to say the least.
Most certainly. I think this is going to be one heck of a roller coaster ride, and then sometimes it's going to be fun, and sometimes it's going to be a little scary along the way.
Yeah. And giving into the fear is not what will ever. I'm a firm believer in EFT. That's another. That's the emotional freedom technique. I believe, and there is nothing that you need to hold in your emotional bank account that needs to hold you back, no matter what is going on in this world around you. And that's a really kind of another downfall. The internet is fantastic. It's marvelous. It's wonderful. But our brains as human beings cannot process this stuff fast enough. I'm sorry. We're just not meant to. So we're always distracted by all of this stuff that we really have no personal control over. We could never have personal control over it. And years ago, yes, life was so much simpler back then because you didn't know about all this stuff. And were people as sick as they are now back then? No. Not that advancements in medicine haven't been beneficial, but there's a catch-22 to everything, so to speak. So, it's really understanding you do not have to, fall into this whirlwind of, oh my God, the world is coming to an end and things are changing, but your personal space is still your personal space, and nobody can take that away from you, no matter what.
Right. We've come through so much of the show here, Sharita, but I've had one or two people here particularly really patient in the caller queues. And I know that you tend to work with people, and I don't normally take callers in my show, but I know that there were a couple of people that were planning to call in, so I was going to give them a chance since they have been waiting through this whole time. And I know that you do some very interesting things, and I thought it might be fun to try this tonight and give it a chance. And that way people can kind of get an opportunity to see how you work with people.
Yes.
Live. Okay. So the person that I've had waiting here, from before we even started the show tonight, is calling in from 443 area code. So I'm going to go ahead and open up their mic here. And 443, you're live on the air.
Hi, how are you?
We're
Good.
doing
How are you?
Sharita, this is Jerry. This is Jerry, your friend from Facebook.
Jerry, hey! How are you, my love?
I told you I'd be here.
Well, there you are. Well, there you are.
It's a really good show.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having that patience. Yeah, I know you're a Scorpio.
Yes, I am.
And I know Saturn's in your sun sign right now, so boy, do you have patience.
Is that what it is?
Well, you are being asked to be very patient in your life right now because of that planetary influence. And am I now? You know, I remember birthdays, but I got a lot of people on Facebook. Are you the 11th of November?
I'm close. You're close, but I'm the 14th.
You're the 14th. Okay. Okay. Pardon me that I did not remember the exact.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! Are you kidding me?
Well, you know, it depends. Sometimes I'll remember the birthday and not the name. You know, it's just kind of funny. It depends sometimes for me. So let's see what you are. Where are you in the timeline? So you are the 16 constant, and of course, you're on last year's cycle. So you're in the 4 personal year right now.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Okay, good. My math is working at this late hour of the night. So now what we do, and for the listeners out there, we were talking about this also a little bit with the United States in particular, but we flow in time in 9 via 9 every 9 years, every 9 months, every 9 days. There's always a number. There's a layer of numbers that will tell us how to operate in our forecast. So, Jerry, right now, you are in year 4, and this is going via your birthday that just passed in 2013. And now there's some numerologists out there that would disagree with me, but I have plenty of other numerologists that do agree with me, and we say, if you are born at the end of the year, as such as you are, Jerry, you did not live a month and a half and then pop into a new cycle because you weren't here a whole year of your life yet. So it's when those numbers lock into place every calendar year that's when that year starts for you. So that's why you are in your 4 year, and you will continue to be in this 4 year throughout 2015's birthday, and then you'll pop into the year of major changes and stuff. So you're in this year right now where you're building that final wall of that foundation we were also referring to back earlier in the show. So you're going to go back to 13, 12, 11, 10. So 2010 is when you saw a lot of new things in your life start to happen. And you go back to 2009, and that's when you were in your last 9 year, and you saw 2009 to 10 was when things closed off in your life, concluded, finalized. They made the space. And that was all the results of the previous 8 years that was involved in closing all that off. And now you were at the beginning, and in 2010 you were at the beginning again. It's like the universe said, hey, Jerry, here's a brand new package of seeds. Go plant month to month of your life. And then 2011 to 12 was something emotional showed up. There was a lot of cooperative energy in your life at that time. There was something you needed to nurture. The experiences that showed up in that year almost distracted you from those new beginnings you felt like you started, but the nurturing process you went through that year all the same watered those seeds because seeds can't grow without water. Then you went into 2012 into this past birthday, and that was your year of learning, your year of growing. You saw some growth come up above the ground a little bit. And this year, now that you're in, you're going to start to get the roots super solid. You can also look at these 4 years like it's a new foundation as well. So you got 1, 2, 3. You've got 3 walls up already. Now you're working on the 4th one. And this is a year, the 4 years are interesting because it almost feels like what you're doing, you're not seeing any progress. And why? Because it's like the roots. You can't see them under the ground, but they're growing. You just don't see the results quite so strongly. It's also a time in your life where you're going to understand, and you're being asked to understand the difference between what you've been tolerating and what you're meant to be allowing, which means tolerance is putting up with something you don't like, and you just kind of deal with it. The allowing lets it be, and there is no negativity around you. You're not putting up with it. It's not like, okay, I'm just going to deal with it. There's a total difference in social. It's shifting from the energy of what you've been tolerating and getting obstacles out of your way so you can just allow. And then you've done the work so that when you go into your birthday later this year, now that we're in 2014, you're going to blossom because you're going to go into a 5-year, and that's going to bring you to all these huge changes in your life. Now, from the astrology side of things, why I said you're so patient right now for having waited so diligently on the phone is you have the very planet right now in your sun sign of Saturn, who is asking you to slowly but surely change the approaches of your life. Like what no longer works in the way you kind of present your immediate personality, you know, how you appear to the world, how you really take in your first impressions in life, all of that is changing. So there's almost things like, you know, you're feeling a little restricted in certain ways, or you feel like that pace is not the way that you want it to be, but you're kind of meant to just go with that flow. And because whatever Saturn is trying to clear out for you is not, those doors are meant to go. That they're meant to close, and you're meant to bring on this new sense of responsibility, because whenever Saturn's around, he just says, you got to do it my way. You can't do it your way anymore. Does that all make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Did you have
so you know,
yeah, go ahead.
Just so you know, this is the first show that I got to listen to you for the whole show, because I always had, it must have been retrograde because I had technical difficulties, so I never got to hear a whole show. So I really enjoyed this, and I was on here because I enjoyed this more than anything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Did you have a particular question about anything?
Dang. I don't know. There's so much that's gone on this year, and most of the stuff has been a lot of patience, even though there's been a lot of frustrating days for me. But it's all been lots of, you just have to sit and wait type thing, you know.
And it's interesting for you because, you know, you being born to the 14th of the month as well, that's not the patient side of you.
Absolutely not.
The 14 is what loves the change. That's the Mercury influence with you very strongly, numbers-wise. So, and combo that with being a Scorpio. See, Scorpios do know how to be patient. They really do. Out of all the fixed signs, they have the most patience because let me tell you, you know, when you're that fixed energy and you are guided by Pluto in that regard, and Pluto is the planet that, and it is still a planet via astrology. The astronomers disagree with us. Of course, you know, astronomers and astrologers do not see anything eye to eye, by the way. But Pluto is still very valuable in our world. You know, Pluto is the elliptical planet that takes everybody else in. I mean, that's your brilliance in this life, is that you see such scope and you see the whole huge picture, which takes time and patience to do. But the 5 part of you is like, okay, let's change. I want something new now. You know, I'm
oh my
on
God,
the go, you know. And that's probably
that is so on the money.
And that's probably been the most frustrating thing about having Saturn in your sign since, you know, Saturn's been in Scorpio since the fall of 11. So, you know, and it's not going to really get out of there until 2015. It's going to pop into Sagittarius for a little bit, but then it goes back into it for a tail. So it's going to get out of there for a bit, but then it'll go back because of the retrograde. Because all the planets retrograde, they all do it. But for you in where your sun sits, being born on the 14th, Saturn will never be on top of your sun. with that little tidbit, because it's only going to do like the tail end of the 20 degrees of Scorpio when it goes back in. So it won't be so strong for you, but you still probably feel it a little bit. That's going to be all throughout that year of change coming anyway.
There is.
But, you know, I mean, this month for you, you're in a month right now of you will see some changes happening. This is a 5 personal month right now. So, you know, you're going to get this month and October will both be 5 months for you. October, you'll be feeling like these changes are on in full. What will be coming in November then influence that entire year's cycle. You can expect by April to see some things conclude, finalize. April to May are very pivotal months for you on some level. There's some things that will clear out in April, and new beginnings will happen in May. So be on the lookout for that. Just as far as just how these cycles will go on a monthly basis within this year of the 4. So you'll see that.
What month's my money month?
Where's my money month?
Is there one of them?
Finances are favored pretty much in a 6 personal month. So I would say, and that's coming for you in February. But now, mind you, we've got the Mercury retrograde, so who knows?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And when you're looking at, I mean, for you right now, you know, this Venus retrograde is asking you to change up the value of what you think, how you communicate. You know, what are you doing on that level? When you look at when you look at the Mercury retrograde coming up in February, that's going to be in your home and family life. So you're going to see some changes going on there. And the Mars retrograde that's when the Mars is in Libra right now already, and it's already on the approach. But it's going to take him a long time because, you know, I mean, the retrograde is like a couple months long. So, but that's in your inner process area of the life. So anything you can do to kind of step into the retreat. Like for you right now, I would so recommend journaling, writing, paying close attention to your dreams, because there's a lot of activated energy in your subconscious because of that Mars presence there. So whatever
even
you're
the dreams that are like totally crazy, like you cannot even figure out what the heck that meant.
Well, do you remember them pretty vividly though? Even if they're like totally distorted scenarios?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay, write them all down anyway, even if it seems like the craziest thing. And then you start to depict the feelings of those dreams, the colors, feelings. What was the action in the dream? Because it's like a puzzle. It doesn't mean, the little thing. So like an example, like, you know, you could be driving in a car, or you could be sitting in a car. You could be driving a car backwards down the road. Well, what's the Of course, we don't naturally drive our cars backwards down the road. But symbolically, what is that maybe showing you about your waking world? Oh, there's something that you're doing that you're not moving forward. So the dream is trying to tap into a little bit. If you can do a little research on the web, but look up Edgar Casey's way of dream interpretation. He's the best. Their mythology, that's the one you want to look at, and the rest of it is, in my opinion, hogwash. But Edgar Casey had the best way to determine what those dreams meant, and it's not looking it up in a dream dictionary. It's really understanding what's that. You know, dreams are really a gift when you really understand how to depict them. So fun stuff. Yeah, because your dream state is activated for months, so you're going to have some fun there.
Okay.
So enjoy.
So I wanted to share with you.
Yeah.
In 2010, that's when I actually started taking numerology classes. I thought you'd like to hear that.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic new beginning for you.
Yeah. And then there is a lot of changes that have happened, especially the last 2 years. I was a chef 2 years ago. I'm not any longer.
Mm-hmm.
I had a commercial license since '90, which I probably, after October, won't use anymore. And I do foresee a lot of changes coming up.
Yeah. Oh, next year, as that Saturn will finish up in your sign, and you go into the 5-year and later in the fall. Yeah. Like your world is so different, you won't know where you are.
Yeah.
But it's good changes that are coming. It's not that it's a negative thing. You see, because and you're a 14-5, so you like change. Like next year, you're going to feel really good about where you are. It's just, this year ahead is, you got some obstacles to kind of chuck out of the way. This is a great year. If you're into the Indian deities, Ganesha is the best guy to call upon, and maybe get a little figurines of him or little, whatever. Just kind of call upon him a lot because he's the guy that gets things out of your way. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And how do you say his name?
Ganesh. Ganesha, I believe. Lord Ganesha. I'm probably not saying it right, but it's either Ganesh or Ganesha. Okay. Either or.
Yes, Gansha.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's like Gansha. That's exactly how I spelled it.
Yeah.
Ganesha.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, you guys. This has just been lovely.
You're welcome, Jerry. Thanks so much for listening and being a part of the show.
Oh, God. You're my family that I share with all the time. So.
I know. How awesome. I know. I do have a wonderful Facebook family. I do. Yes.
Yes, I do too. Excellent. I enjoy it. I live my, whatever you want to call it, through all of you girls. Allie, you,
that's
Allison.
Right. Of course, Allie. Yes, she's my fusion reading partner in crime.
There you go.
When her and I get together, forget it.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
God. She amazes me every time. She blows my mind with what she does. I mean, my God, it's astounding to me. I've never seen anything like it, to be honest with you. So, I love it. So, it's very good.
Yeah.
Well, you have a very happy New Year.
Oh, you too, honey. We'll be talking.
And we'll be talking, of course.
Yes, and thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on the show, and I know it's getting late, and I want you to get at least one more in.
Yeah.
So thank you.
We will. Okay, you're welcome, Jerry. Thank you.
Good night.
Okay,
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wonderful. So we're looking at 6 months, and I'll have to probe you maybe sometime off the air, Sharita, for how you're figuring your months.
Well, actually, Jess, I'm going to be doing a Forecasting Freedom class coming up in March, but actually I do want to ask you a little something, so we'll talk off air about something afterwards. So I'll talk to you about that.
Okay. I want to give you, because we're kind of winding down, I have to get a couple of things in at the end of the show here, and but we're kind of winding down. I would love for you, anything that you have coming up, courses, contact information, if you can squeeze that in here, that would be great.
Sure. I do. It's going to be what I encourage anyone to do who would like to keep up with what's going on consistently is to go to my website, and where you see that purple sign up button, sign up, and you can get my free forecasting all month long and keep up with all the things going on. I will be offering a forecasting freedom course. It's going to be at the end of March into April, and we're going to be doing a totally free class to start off. And if you're interested in moving into the course, we're going to be doing that as well. And sign up for that, and that's where we're at. So go to sharitastar.com. That's where everything is. You'll find all my social media links, the book. You can watch a book trailer about the book under publications, and you can also give yourself a free reading under Explore. You can check out more about how the signs and the planets work together with the numbers and how we do what we do. So go and check that out.
Awesome. And, it's been such an incredible pleasure to have you on the show. And I think we'll have to get you back again at some point on here. You know what? I know when we first connected, and you're like, really, like, you don't have an opening until like 5 months from now.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. That actually wasn't really that surprising to me. I mean, most people I know, yeah, they have guests. I mean, when I did my show, I was booked out. Well, I didn't do my show weekly. But yeah, once I got rolling along, yeah, it was like, okay, well, no, I can't fit you in for another, few months. But once you get popular, that's it. So you have a lot of people to share with us. I mean, it's wonderful the work that you do. And I'm trying to remember your lexigram off the top of my head, but I know we have the world healer in your name, so I know that that's in there. And I mean, you're such a gift to us as well. So thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show.
It. I know we are going to get you back on again, Sharita. There's no question about it in my book, anyways, because I want you back on again. And maybe we can then, when we bring you back, a lot more time for you to work with people as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's my thing. I mean, I spin these little forecasts very quickly on the air. That I've done triple times over. So anytime, I'm game.
And if we didn't get to you tonight, because we didn't really have a lot of time to get to very many people tonight, Sharita does have these kind of like places that she's showing up regularly where you can get the readings done on the air. So you just need to watch for those. And if you're following her on Facebook and things, you'll get that information.
Yeah, or if you're on the email list, I always send out, the information about shows coming up for the free readings. So, yeah, like I said, be sure to sign up for the email list because that'll keep you up to date, even if you're not on Facebook and, you don't do all that other stuff. Twitter and, There's
exactly.
So much social media. We're overloaded with social media too, but it's fun.
Sharita, it has been a true pleasure, and I've got a couple of things I've got to wrap up here because we're down to just a few minutes left. But it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to having you back again.
Thank you so much again. My great true attitude of gratitude to you and your listeners, and a blessed, abundant, always abundance in 2014. And if we self-reflect and do our inner work, we're going to have a fantastic year.
And again, we have Sharita's contact information at the bottom of the show description as well. I do want to mention that next week on our show, I'm going to have Shelley Alexander. She's a holistic chef, and she's going to help us to find delicious ways to be healthy and manage our weight and health concerns. And, a lot of people get in there and they're looking at that weight and health things at the beginning of the year, and she has some incredible, delicious, delectable recipes and things. So she's going to be helping us out next week. And, you can stay on top of all of the events I have going on through my event site at jessieannnicholsgeorge.eventbrite.com. Of course, following my books and videos that I put out every month, all of those great things you can